We are honored to have you all here today, and I was asked if I could give you a little bit of background about how we got to where we are, and Ann and I will tag team it. We'll be very brief and give you an opportunity to ask questions. I'm an unlikely guy to have become the state superintendent of education. I have been a lawyer for my professional career. I got involved in volunteering in public school in the city of New Orleans many, many years ago, and as a result of that work, Mike Foster appointed me to the State Board of Education in 1996, and I served for 8 years on the board as an appointed member of the board. I took 3 years off, and after Katrina, Governor Blanco asked me if I would consider serving as the state superintendent in her last year in office. And I worked with the State Board of Education, and they selected me to serve for that 1 year. Just after the conclusion and the election of Bobby Jindal, we agreed that I would stay on, and I did for an additional 3 years as state superintendent. So it was quite an unlikely circumstance. I never aspired to be on the State Board of Education. In fact, I think when Mike Foster appointed me, he was so frustrated with the State Board of Education, his platform vow was to abolish the State Board of Education. My law firm said, why would you want to be on the board of an enterprise that the governor himself wants to abolish? And I said, well, I think we have an opportunity to do some dramatically different things, and I've seen some things in the schools that I've been working in that were very disappointing and reminded me of this video that we just saw. I know that kids can do a lot better, and I know that adults can do a lot better if the system is created in which they can succeed. Both can succeed. So when we got on the state board back in 1996, there was really no way to measure whether schools were doing well or not. Now, we sort of take accountability, what we call accountability today, for granted. But in 1996, there was no such thing as accountability. There was no such thing as a standardized test. There was no such thing as measurement. There was no such thing as trying to hold the system accountable. And so that was developed back then. In 1999, we adopted what we now know as our accountability system. We adopted LEAP, and we adopted a set of standards back, and these standards were originally developed in 1993. So the standards that have been used in the state of Louisiana until the advent of the Common Core, those standards were a 1993 model. Model T, if you ask me. And so we then went through a lot of discussions, and I just want to mention a couple of them too. One of the biggest ones when I joined the board in '96 was the fact that the MFP, the Minimum Foundation Formula, was not fully funded at the time. Now today we have a fully funded formula. It's not growing, but back then we didn't even fund the formula completely. The state made a promise that it would fund completely if schools were held accountable to standards and to levels of expectations. And the funding formula was fully funded by 2000. The second thing is that there was a realization that although we had an accountability system, there were no consequences for failure. And so we worked on building a consequence for failure. People talk about local control and not wanting to intervene over local control, but I think the state recognized back then in 2003 and later after Katrina with the creation and the advancement of the Recovery School District, 65% of the state's funds on average fund public local schools. So the state minimum foundation program on average funds every local school district 2/3 of their money on average. And the quid pro quo from the state was, if you're going to get this money. You have to show some results. And if you can't, then in extreme circumstances, the state must intervene. And that's why we have some of the things that we have now. And this is an appropriate time to turn it over to Ann, because Ann was very involved in this creation of the Recovery School.
I appreciate that, Paul. And let me just introduce myself to those of you who may not know me. I'm former State Senator Ann DUPLESSIS. In my real life, thing that helps me eat, I'm a banker. I'm Senior Vice President in charge of retail banking, sales, insurance, marketing, and anything else they want to give me at Liberty Bank. And I've been in banking about 30 years. Well, 13, 14 plus years ago, when I was called on to run for office. Actually, I wasn't called on to run for office. I got into this really bad argument with the former state senator, and I'm sure a number of you know who I'm talking about. Got into this really bad argument with this dude, and because I just didn't believe that he was doing what he was supposed to do for me as a constituent. And so I challenged him. I didn't mean to challenge him, but I challenged him. I said, listen, if you don't do what's right, I'm going to have to find somebody to run against you. And if I can't find anybody to run against you, I'm going to do it myself. Well, I didn't really mean it. I said, okay, what am I supposed to do now? I had no money, no name recognition, none of the above. But what I did have was a care for people. And I think I had favor. No, I know I had favor. Some of you know what I mean by favor. And so favor and a passion for people and a passion to make sure that things were being done right was what drove me most of the time in my time in the legislature. When I was elected at the state level. I didn't do local. I didn't do school boards. You have an elected body to deal with all the stuff that's going on at the school board. But as you know, your constituents didn't care about who's elected on the school board, on the city council, wherever. You were an elected official, and if they needed help, they came to you. And so that's what thrust me into this whole idea. I mean, I'm not an educator, right? I'm a banker. But when I would go to meetings and I looked at the faces, the parents, and then the children, and just the despair that they were in the environment. Those of you who are from New Orleans in here know what our system was like. Our local school board was totally dysfunctional. It was so bankrupt that that they paid, get this, they paid a big accounting firm, what, was it $7-8 million? Just to tell us that they can't figure out, put the accounts in balance. Talk about dysfunction. Talk about the environment that our kids were in. And then when I went home, I saw my kids. Now, I've been favored, right? My kids were not in that dysfunction. And so I realized, you know, there was something that I had to do about this. I didn't know what. And then I was approached about doing some of the takeover legislation. Now, originally I didn't want to do takeover legislation, and Karen Carter-Peterson was the lead on the House side. What our goal was at that time was to force the system to correct, to self-adjust, self-correct. That didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And so the next year we tried something different. We said, okay, we're gonna, because we believe it's the school board, that's the dysfunctional piece in this, we're gonna remove all of the authority from the school board and let the superintendent be the man or woman in charge, right? Guess what? That didn't happen. Kids were still failing. Kids, every year that we tried something different, every year that we kept trying to fix this system, that year, thousands and thousands of kids who were stuck in those environments did not benefit. So one day I was introduced to the idea, the notion of vouchers, and I'm going to use that word, vouchers. And what the original introduction of vouchers to me, I actually killed the first bill. Austin Badon carried that bill, and I killed it dead. I said, there's no way we should be using public dollars to fund Catholic school education. There's no way we should be doing that. And then I went home and I saw some more kids in dysfunctional environments and some more families and you know, not breaking the cycle. And I got reintroduced to vouchers again. And for me, the idea of vouchers was meant to, at the time, originally, was meant to say, if I gotta pluck one child out at a time, then we gotta use this as a resource. Until the grown-ups get it right, until the educators fix it the best way they know how to do it, but educators are still aren't fixing it. So I embraced vouchers, and vouchers grew into reform. I embraced all options. We did help do most of the bills that expanded charter schools, you know, that gave us the thriving, I believe, thriving charter school movement in the New Orleans area and growing in the state. What this does, guys, this movement is not about damning the public school system. What it's about is, one, forcing every method that is used to educate a child to be the best. And then allowing families to take the resources that are available and let them choose. That's really what this is about. That is all this is about. And so I embraced it and then started working with the superintendent here, and I think we did some really phenomenal things, and I'll let him kind of close with some of the things that we were able to accomplish.
Thank you, Ann. You know, New Orleans is just one of the episodes in the story, but there are many other schools around our state that are not able to provide the kind of success that children deserve. Children do not deserve to be stuck in schools that don't work. And I will tell you that it's been remarkable when we inject a little innovation and creativity into the mix, and we put pressure on the local school districts to change what they're doing, it does give us better results. So we have pushed the idea of vouchers or scholarships. We have pushed the idea of charter schools. We have pushed the idea of private schools. All schools should be available, all options should be available. You know, people often ask me, why did I get involved in this in the first place? What interest did I have? Well, I just think it's wrong, fundamentally, that there were no schools in my neighborhood that I could send my kids to. There were no public schools in my neighborhood that I could be confident in that my kids were going to get a good public education. So my zip code was bad for my kids. I could afford to do something else. Now, in Jefferson Parish, where I live, there are charter schools. There are quality traditional schools. There are lots better opportunities. In fact, we saw Jefferson Parish move from a D school district to a B school district in 4 short years when they just really focused and recognized that the state was not going to tolerate bad outcomes. We've seen improvement in Baton Rouge. We've seen improvement in Shreveport. We've seen improvement in Lafayette. We've seen improvement in some small rural districts as well. And we've worked with those small rural districts. Our kids can be successful. And I'll give you one proof point, and then I'll open it up. To me, the biggest difficulty I ever had as state superintendent was when I went to the Baton Rouge school board meeting and told them that we were looking at taking schools and putting them in the recovery school district. And as you might imagine, it raised the roof. The school board president at the time said, well, Paul, you can't show me any examples of schools where poor kids are successful in the state of Louisiana. Can you name me one school? Unfortunately, I was not prepared, and I couldn't. And I was not able to make the case that day. But it forced me to go back and look at the records in the state. And lo and behold, I found 20 schools that were predominantly poor schools and predominantly African American schools that were beating the odds. 20 schools. Turns out one of them was in Baton Rouge, Ryan Elementary School. And I'm saying to myself, shame on me for not being able to call out the school. But the school did exist. We started tracking these schools. These are traditional schools and charter schools that are beating the odds. They can do it. School districts can do it. They must do it for the benefit of these children. And if they won't do it, then we need to find a way to make it happen. So choice of any kind is, in our opinion, that way.
Louisiana, I think, is very fortunate to have a sustained policy of improving schools, and we've seen very good results in Louisiana. We still have a long way to go, but I think we can look back on the last 10 years and say that the efforts to hold schools accountable, the efforts to improve the quality of teaching, the effort to improve the curriculum that we use has been for good, and many kids are doing better as a consequence. We see that in New Orleans, and we see that in other parts of the state.
Long-term, and I guess start with short-term challenges and then long-term challenges.
Well, I think short-term challenges are to make sure that everyone knows and understands why we have the policies that we have today, what caused that to happen, and why should they be continued, or should they be changed? So I think one of the interesting questions with a new governor, a new legislature, lots of new legislators, is that they need to come around to understanding why we got to where we got and where we need to go. I think, the challenges also, the short-term challenges also include challenges of money, challenges of which standards and curriculum we're going to use, getting that behind us. Teachers need to know what they're supposed to teach and what they're expected to do in the classroom. So I think once we get those things behind us, we'll be in much better shape. And I think long term, we still have some very serious challenges in certain pockets in the state. Still some difficult schools. Kids don't have options that will allow them to get the kind of education they deserve. So I think those are some of the ones that we're going to have to struggle with going forward.
And we're looking at a 10-year perspective on school reform here in Louisiana, and you had a lot to do with initiating these reforms. How do you feel about the position that we're in right now?
Well, I feel good, and yet I don't feel so good. And the reason is, 10 years ago, the state of Louisiana was in, dire straits with regards to our educational system, how kids were being shuffled in, the public school systems. New Orleans was in a terrible, terrible state, and it appeared as though our whole a system was in, pure dysfunction. 10 years into the future, we have come, I believe, a very long way, not only in helping to provide resources, opportunities, and programs that allow for families to begin to move themselves out of a dysfunctional environment into more of a positive environment for their children, but we still have a long way to go. We haven't nearly touched the surface as it relates to the number of kids we should be able to reach. When you have 50,000 to 100,000 children in this state, and we're only able to touch 10 to 15,000 of those kids, we still have a long way to go.
Every child doesn't matter.
Every child isn't entitled to an equal and quality education.
I can't help everyone.
She's not important. He doesn't exist.
Every year, 1.3 million children drop out of school.
Every year.
1.3 million.
1.3 million.
Every year.
1.3 million children drop out.
Together, we can help every child succeed.
Together.
Together, we can help every child succeed.
Every child.
Together, we can help make a difference.
Together, we can help every child.
Together, we can help.
We can help every child find a school that works.
A charter school.
A private school.
A public school.
Any school.
Any school.
Every school, every choice for every child.
We can help make a difference.
And help make a difference.
We can help.
We can help make a difference.
Together. We can help change the future. Together.
We can put children first.
We can put children first.
By supporting educational choice.
School choice.
School choice.
By helping children attend a quality school that their parents choose.
Don't do it for me.
Don't do it for me.
Don't do it for you. Do it for her.
For him. For them.
Do it for the 1.3 million children who dropped out of school last year.
Do it for the millions trapped in underperforming schools nationwide.
But most of all, do it today.
Do it today.
Make a difference today.
Take action today.
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 Take action today.
Support school choice.
And text My Choice to 52886.
Or text My Choice
to 52886.
That's My Choice, 52886.
Next we have King Campbell, who is the Executive Director of IDEA Public Schools. He's going to give you present day results on school choice here in our state.
Yeah, how y'all doing? So Kelly asked me to do something, and as I am often known to do, when I get the mic, I just talk about whatever I want to talk about. And I'll do this just kind of as a prelude to this panel that we're going to have that I've been asked to moderate. But I do want to shift a little bit because we've talked a lot about policy. But I do think the important thing is to understand, again, as my friend said, that this is about kids and families. It is about kids and families. And recognizing the challenges that we had in education in Louisiana, legislature and state leaders created programs to try to help. The charter school program was one of those programs. The Louisiana Scholarship Program is one of those programs. And there have been others. There are a whole range of things that you've done. But as far as choice is concerned in these programs, I think the goal was to try to do two things. One was to give new tools and opportunities to educators, right? If we freed them up, if we gave them the ability to do some things differently, could they provide a better, higher quality of education for kids? And both of those programs allow educators to do that. And the second thing was that we wanted to give parents the ability to choose, especially low-income parents. Because the reality is many of us in this room have the ability to choose, and we exercise that ability all the time. And just because we move to the suburbs where schools are good, and we say we're a public school parent, doesn't mean that we haven't made a choice. That our income hadn't allowed us to do something that our less fortunate colleagues and friends are unable to do. And so we said we wanted to create these options, and we felt and believed, and state leaders believed, that parents would say, hey, I'm good with this. I want to try it. And so now you have, what, 100, how many kids in charter schools in Louisiana, Carolina? 75,000 or so? 75,000, so 135 schools, 139 charter schools all across this state. So educators are picking up the mantle. They are using the tool you gave them. Parents are choosing. They're doing exactly what we thought they would do. And I would argue those are good things. We created the Louisiana Scholarship Program. Last year had 12,000 plus applications. They got 7,200 seats. Low-income families, parents are making a choice. And we say we want greater levels of parental involvement and parent responsibility. And now that they're taking that responsibility, we have some people who want to take it away, who want to say, we don't like the choice you're making, so we want to prevent you from making these choices. And part of me just doesn't understand it. I don't understand how we could sit with our kids safely ensconced in suburban schools and private schools and all those things, and we look at other families and we say, well, no, you got to stay. You got to stay because if you leave, it might destroy public education or it might destroy our school system. Poor people in this state and this country have a whole lot of burdens that they have to carry. I do not think it's fair that we also tell them that you are responsible for making sure your school district stays solvent. Because if you make a choice to leave, they're going to be damaged. And so we're not going to let you leave. We're going to make you stay there. And so people are going to try to put a whole bunch of clouds and dust and stuff so that you don't understand what's going on. But at its heart, that's what it's really about. Are we going to say to poor families, your kids have to stay in schools that I would never send my kids to, because if you leave, it might destroy this system? And there are people who are making that argument who are not part of that system. There are people who are making that argument who find ways into good schools, and I just think it's fundamentally unfair. And so as you go through this session, I really believe and hope that you just keep kids and families in mind when you think about times to go out and have these debates. And as folks have asked you to do, talk to the families. Talk to the parents, talk to the kids, talk to the educators who are involved and who are doing this. This stuff is important. Education is still the best anti-poverty program that we have. Bar none. It is the best. And if we can't make it work for these kids, they have no shot. No shot. So again, I just think it's very important that you hear from people who are actually taking up the opportunity that you've created, who are working with this program, and I think providing just a high quality service for kids and families, and really transforming the lives of some of those kids. And so as a way of starting, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and to spend about 3 minutes just giving you the general stats on their school, what they do, how it works, how many kids they have, where they are. And I think we got a good cross-section because we got Ben Cleveland here who runs New Orleans College Prep Charter School in New Orleans. We got Ronnie Briggs. Everybody knows Ronnie Briggs, I think. So he needs no introduction. I don't know how many people know Paula, but Paula is here also. And so I'll have you guys start. Let's start down here with you, Paula, and then let's work down. And then I have a few questions that I want to ask you.
Hello to everyone. I'm Paula Fabre. I'm fortunate every day to go to St. Francis Xavier School. This is my 45th year in education. We have 184 of the best students on earth at our school. I spent 38 years in the public school system, retired as an assistant superintendent. I can see both sides of every issue, but I'm a firm believer in choice, and my students have great longevity at the school. Many of them have not left. We have exceptional parental support, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. We have so many success stories. I can't wait to tell you about some of my children, and I invite you to come and visit us at any time.
Thank you. I'm Ronnie Briggs, a founding board member and current chairman of the board of Good Shepherd Activity School in New Orleans. We've been open 15 years, actually opened in 2001. We've been involved with the scholarship program all the way from 2008. And I think one of the things they asked us to talk about was, challenges and then successes. And I remember back in the very beginning, we literally had to go from house to house when the law was passed and identify students that could actually qualify for the program. And then we made them, we couldn't help it, it went quick, but stand in long lines and bring documents that I couldn't, original documents I couldn't produce myself. So we had a lot of challenges in the very beginning, but we've of course gone from 608 that first year, Anna will correct me, to over 7,000 statewide. And it's been phenomenal. It's been a phenomenal cooperation between the state, between guardians, educators, and everybody. So I'm really, really glad to do that, to talk today. And then I'm just going to talk about a little bit about our successes too, and then pass it over. You know, we talk about the students, and to us, that's really the key. The rest of it is neither here nor there. So I just want to read you 3 parents' responses to the latest questionnaire to the parents on the scholarship program. And one of them, the first one is, I won't even name the school, but I can certainly do that to you afterwards. But she says, this parent says, I love it because it gives the child the opportunity to go to a good school. I love my child getting that extra attention. I feel good knowing that she is getting the education that I know that I would not be able to afford. She's getting to learn religion, and it's a safe environment. Love, SMA. Another parent says, I think this program is the best thing that could happen for the kids because at one time you couldn't even apply at any school without funds. And some families could not afford the schools for a better education and a faith-based standards. It helps kids believe in themselves and feel special that they can choose what school to go to so they may get a better education and have a better future. And there are several others, but I just want one other thing that I remember somebody told me over the last 10 years of this movement. Before Katrina in New Orleans, for low-income families, it literally was like you had to go to the local grocery store. You really couldn't go anywhere else. And you go in on Monday and the meat was bad, and you go in on Wednesday and the bread was stale, and you go in on Friday and all that. What I tell the parents from 2008 since then, you now have a choice. You can go to a different grocery store. You can go to a different school, certainly, but with that comes responsibility. You have to get involved with your children. You have to get involved with your community, and you have to do your part. So thank you all so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Ben KLEBAN. I'm the founder, president of New Orleans College Prep Charter Schools in New Orleans. We've been in existence for, this is our 9th school year. We operate 3 charter schools crossing pre-K through 12th grade, and we are the first charter organization to start a Head Start program in the city, and are increasingly expanding our presence in the early childhood sphere because we know it's so important to start with our kids as early as possible and get them ready for the world. We've had quite a bit of success in closing academic gaps for our kids over the years, primarily through turnarounds of failing schools. So we took over Cohen High School 5 years ago, and after 4 years of management, we're able to bring the school up from a low F letter grade to a B. And folks, if you know folks in New Orleans, you mentioned Walter O. Cohen High School, and tell them that it's now a B school, you'll get some eyebrows raised. It is a different place, and the kids are really thriving. And the most recent turnaround effort we had was actually a charter school that had been revoked for low performance, called Crocker Elementary. And the leader there has done an exceptional job and brought the school up from an F to a C in only 2 years. So we're excited about the progress we're making for our kids, 99% of whom are low-income and African-American students. We've had 100% college acceptance for 2 years in a row from Cohen High School. And our kids' lives paths are really changing for the better. So I do want to say one quick thing on the local return issue. I wish Representative Bowie was still here. I appreciate all the legislators in the room that are taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk with us today. I want you all to know, because I know this issue is going to keep coming up, there is an increasing coalition of educators in the city who are working together, more than I've ever seen before. I'm talking about school leaders of RSD schools, of charter schools, of traditional schools, including OPSB school leaders that have a common vision that's focused on kids. And so, for example, tonight at our local school board meeting, there's a coalition of 90% of all the school leaders in the city, both RSD and OPSB schools, that are going to our board in support of a new citywide funding formula that will be differentiated for kids with special needs. That's never happened before in New Orleans, and you wouldn't expect it necessarily to happen in a city that is so decentralized, being almost all charter school system. but it's happening because we have such a strong community of educators focused on kids. There is also a coalition of probably 100% of the schools that would support a local return bill if it had certain provisions that would mainly focus on protecting our autonomies. Mr. PASTOREK talked about that earlier. Autonomies are the reason why we've been so successful. But there are folks that are willing to work together on a solution, and I hope Representative Bowie will hear us. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to ask each of you to tell me, and we talk a lot about successes, but I think the important thing is to talk about the success of individual kids and families. So I want you to each tell me a story about a kid, a family, you know, that has changed because of being involved with your school.
Well, I'm happy to tell you about someone I will call Keith. Keith graduated 8th grade last year from our school. He's now attending Catholic High, where he joins 4 other scholarship children, because I have 2 additional ones that are attending Catholic. He's being very successful at Catholic. His family had no idea that he would even be able to go to Catholic. I think it's excellent that you have hope always for all of the students. But with Keith, it was a great opportunity for him, and every time Catholic High or St. Joseph's Academy, where we have 5 scholarship children attending now and 2 traditional students, every time there's a work day, the children come back to our school. And Keith spoke to students when he was at our school 2 weeks ago, and what he said was he had no idea of the opportunities that were available to him, and that he appreciated so much what we did for them. And believe me, it is not at all about what they're doing for this moment. It's about what kind of person they will be. Are they learning the next thing that they need to know? And with Keith, we know that he was indeed learning the next thing that he needed to know. He was elected governor of Boise State of youth legislature 2 years ago. We're very proud of him. It took some work. There's so many success stories, and I can't help but tell you about the parent who is a sitter. All of my families are high poverty. She called me last year and said, I'm telling you, Miss Fabre, I wanted to kill Jaden when I got home yesterday, because when I came in the house, there was flour, there was water all over the kitchen, all over the sink. It had dried. And she said, I got my belt off the hook, and I said to him, boy, I told you, don't you dare cook when your mama is not home. And she said, he looked at her and he said, but Mama, I think I can be a scientist. He was replicating the science experiment that he did. He never before told her he thought he could be a scientist. Our children need an opportunity to think, all of them. I had Ernest Gaines over. They did the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. They asked all kinds of deep questions. We're teaching our children to think. And every time I see Keith, and every time I see Jaden, I think about all of those kinds of things that are so important to all of our children. And I firmly believe that your zip code should never ever determine where you have to go to school unless you want it to. So we have numerous success stories. One parent, I have to tell you this one, called me and said, Miss Fabre, my daughter came home holding her mouth. Oh, Mom, you just don't know what's in my mouth. And she said it was after the aftercare, so she knew it was too late to go to a dentist. She said, oh my goodness, what have you done? She said, we swabbed our mouths today and made slides on the microscope. Mom, you just don't know what's in my mouth. And she'd never done that kind of thing before. Okay, so there are numerous success stories. It takes a lot for a child to have hope, and that's what I want my children to have and my parents to have. And I don't want to keep you until 9 o'clock, so I'm going to turn the mic over to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you. I of course, have a lot of stories, but one of my favorites is a young man we had. He was in the 4th grade, 3rd or 4th grade. We had a congressman come from Washington and toured the school, and so we had our little student, Johnny, give a talk. And when Johnny left the room, I put my arm around a congressman's shoulder and I said, Congressman, the only way that he's ever seen his father is through prison bars. And so we walked the rest of the ground, and the congressman and I stayed friends and corresponded for years. But that young man, we have what we call a graduate support program. We follow our kids after they leave us in the 7th grade to high school, and we follow them all the way to college. That young man today went on to high school, got in a little problem. We got him in a great high school, and got a little problem, and he got put out of that school. And we said, that's strike number one. We don't love you any less, we love you more. You get one more shot. Got him in another school. He not only finished high school there, he'll be a junior now up at USL in Lafayette. So it does work when you have the time and the patience and the love for him.
I would just share 2 quick ones if I can. They're pretty different. Charter, so much of the rhetoric out there about charter schools is oftentimes about not serving our special needs children well, and it's just quite the opposite, I think, is the reality. So I just wanted to share a couple of quick stories. One little girl named Jamira came to Crocker 2 years ago. Open enrollment school, we get kids with all types of disabilities. Jamira was in a wheelchair, could not feed herself, basically had no self-sufficiency. We gave her a one-on-one aid and a good chunk of the day with self-contained direct instruction from a specialized educator. And within the first few months, Jamira was out of her wheelchair, feeding herself in the cafeteria along with the other children, laughing and playing, and just full of joy by what she was able to start to experience in her life. And that is one of them that story will always be in my mind. And the second one, quickly, also a special needs student. Montreal started with us when we first opened 9 years ago in 6th grade. He was 15. Special education student, could not read. And we delivered, and he was also angry. We get in fights a lot. I mean, he had lost both his parents. I mean, he was in a really tough place. And the staff just wrapped their arms around him and adopted him, basically. Spent countless hours after school teaching him how to read, mentoring him, playing basketball, spending time with him, getting him back on track. And 2 years ago, when he graduated, 20 years old, got into college on a scholarship into a special program in a small school called Johnson College that has a program for special education students. And he was just a kid. Honestly, if you had told me 9 years ago when I first met him, he'd be going to college, I don't know if I would have believed it. So I think that there is just amazing things that can happen when you enable and empower schools to get really good people engaging with our kids and give them the freedom and the skills and the resources they need to touch kids' lives.
I read a headline recently where a superintendent said that kind of they were in the fight of their lives against like the choice program, right? Like it was, we got to stop these choice programs because it's really, really affecting us. But you all, for one reason or another, chose, right, to participate in these programs because you didn't have to, right? You didn't have to. What made you decide to choose to do that? And what message would you send to officials who are saying we gotta slow this down, we gotta stop some of this?
Well, I was asked to come to St. Francis. I was doing scholastic audits for the Department of Education in Arkansas. St. Francis is my church parish. I opted to participate in it because my mission has always been to educate students and to make a difference in their lives. I take it very personally. I am a mother myself. And I decided I wanted to participate in it. I saw it as a challenge, and I enjoy it every day. It's 4 years later, and I'm still there. I did it because I want, when I'm finally at home sitting in my rocking chair, that the students that are in control and in the legislature and the House of Representatives will be equipped with what they need to do a very successful job and also to have a great future. And that is why I do it every single day. And I totally love it. It's my favorite job I've ever had.
When we started 2001, the projects were still there, and our mission was to get the low-income student most at risk. And we used to say when we started the program, and today it's really the same, I think. The dollars have changed a little bit since 2001, but the kids that we were attracting that I really got passionate about were those that if we didn't do something from an educational standpoint, they wouldn't get to be 21 years old. They'd either have a dead, the girls would be pregnant, or they'd be in prison and for the rest of their lives. So we became convinced early on, and our founder knew it all along. He's been dead. He died 4 months before we actually opened the school. There is no other way out for these kids than education. It's plain and simple.
I grew up in a suburban San Diego town, white, privileged kid. I had a lot of advantages, good public schools, and I guess I come to this work with the interest in trying to create those same opportunities for kids who weren't as advantaged as I was. And that's what brought me into this work. I started out in business. I went to business school at Harvard, and could have sort of cashed in, but really felt responsibility to give back. And so once actually had a fellowship to start a charter school out of business school, and Katrina hit right after that, and I saw an opportunity that I think has played out to, for the first time in our history, really as a country, start over with a failing school system and build it the right way. And to be part of that has been a really just an unprecedented opportunity and a really great experience to touch a lot of kids' lives, way more than I think I could have otherwise. So I'm grateful and feel blessed to have been part of that in New Orleans. I'm hopeful that more communities across the state and across the country will learn from this unique opportunity we've had and make a difference for kids everywhere.
Keep the mic right there, and we'll go the other way. I want to ask real quick, tell me the 2 or 3 biggest challenges that you're facing right now at your school, charter program, scholarship program, 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges.
So the number one challenge in New Orleans is probably, right, I mean there's so many, but the number one probably at the moment is our future prospects of teacher shortages. And the talent, and continue to talent is the number one thing that makes a difference in the school. I mean, research will show you time and time again, teacher quality, it makes sense, is the number one thing that will affect student outcomes. We are facing citywide in New Orleans potentially up to a 900 teacher shortage in the next few years based on projections. And need to find a way, I think, to expand the sourcing of new teachers and professional development of even career professionals into the teaching profession, especially with our universities. The universities in New Orleans are not supplying a sufficient number of teachers. We have some alternative programs like Teach for America that are helping, but it's not enough. And it's a particular concern, I think, when you all, as legislators, consider bills that may restrict who we're able to hire, what qualifications they have. I just would encourage you to remember that the autonomies are really important, especially when we're facing a huge need for additional teachers. You need to trust the educators in the schools to make the decisions, regardless of whether they might have a certification or a piece of paper. Hold us accountable, but give us the freedom to hire who we need to hire. I think it's going to be a big challenge for us in New Orleans and probably across the state for the foreseeable future.
I'd say our 2 challenges, without a doubt, are serving more students. We've been in the same location since we opened, and we've been looking for a new location for the last 2 years. We just bought a piece of property 3 months ago out in an area of New Orleans where there's 4 applications and only 2 seats available in the scholarship program. So our nightmare is that we wake up 5 or 10 years from now and said we could have served more. So that's a real challenge to us. And the other challenge, of course, is the uncertainty of the funding. When I testified before Senate Finance, whenever it was, 2 weeks ago, you know, I told them, here we are, you'll probably settle this deal March the 9th, I think I got the day right. That's 82 calendar days left before school's out, and that was 42 or 44 days. I mean, calendar days, and then 42 or 44 actual school days. And the people that we serve, they have enough uncertainty, enough mistrust, enough things in their lives than to have to worry about what they're reading in the newspaper now about the program not getting funded and being over. So that's our two challenges.
Our challenges are very similar in that every year when it's time for them to apply for the program, the parents are constantly calling. I have one section of every grade at my school, and once the list comes out, I take Sundays to call parents when they're not at work and to make contact with them. We simply cannot handle the number of parents that are interested in having their students to participate in our school. The other thing that's a challenge for us, for example, I read that there's the possibility that kindergartners would not be able to participate, but we have families that are anticipating their kindergartners joining their siblings for the next school year. So there are many challenges, but we want to continue to provide excellence for our students.
Great. So we talked a little bit about challenges. You gave me some of the success stories. What would you like to see as far as the future of the scholarship program, the charter school program, you know, as we go forward? You know, 10 years from now, how does this look for kids and families and people in Louisiana?
Well, I think nationwide, exactly what constitutes a school is changing. There are many schools, for example, that operate based on project-based management. I'd like to know that 10 years from now, all of our students will be able to receive an education that prepares them for the world. We may not ever be able to end poverty, but when I look at my students, as we give them uniforms and give them the things that they need, I would like to hope that 10 years from now, we will see some of the benefits of that. But the most important thing is that 10 years from now, parents will be able to choose what is the best school for their students. And I think that is very important because not only parents that are fortunate to not be in poverty, but all parents care very deeply about their students, and they're sending us the best product that they have every single day.
Well, I just have to echo that not only in the urban areas, but in the rural areas, we've got places all over our state that hopefully will have the opportunity for the parents to choose, like those that have the 7,000 children in the program now do.
Again, I'm going to talk about New Orleans, but as I've been there 10 years, and we've closed a lot of gaps. The high school graduation rate is up, college enrollment is up, test scores are up. As I think about the next 10 years, what concerns me potentially the most is that we still have probably one of the most segregated school systems in the country. The schools that I operate are 99% low income, 99% African American. 90% of the schools in our city look like that demographically, and then 10% of the schools enroll in a disproportionate share of any white students, of any middle class, upper income students, are all concentrated together in a small number of schools. And for some reason, well, I know there's a lot of reasons, but for some reason, going forward, I don't see our community demanding a different way forward, demanding schools. We talk about choice, but schools that actually serve and are open to all of the public. They're public schools. They ought to look like the public. I have a daughter going into kindergarten, and I want her to learn alongside peers of all different walks of life. And there just aren't that many options. And if we worked on a more diverse public school system across the board, I think our kids of all backgrounds would benefit. Poor kids, rich kids, they all benefit from learning together. And it's just an issue that is oftentimes taboo, people don't talk about, but is a really untapped, huge opportunity for growth, certainly in New Orleans and I'm sure in other areas in our state. that I hope we can push the needle on going forward.
Great. I won't take up too much of your time just because you have heard from Hales, from Paul, and Paul is just such a hero, not just here in Louisiana, but around the country, which is what I want to spend a couple minutes talking about, which is how the work you all are doing is helping to inspire reforms across the country that are benefiting kids. So it's first just such a privilege to be with you, to be with leaders in Louisiana. There's a great quote that says there are three types of people. There are those people who make things happen, those people who watch what happens, and those people who wonder what happened. And you are all the people making things happen in a whole variety of ways. There are few states, if any, that are more focused on supporting parents and finding the best options for their kids than you here in Louisiana. You have demonstrated to the rest of the country that the best way to improve a state's education system is by pursuing something we call in the policy wonk space the three-sector strategy, meaning that it's not about giving up on traditional schools, but about supporting, improving, and holding traditional schools accountable. It's expanding and creating and designing and scaling high-quality charter schools. And it's also about tapping into the diverse options that you can find in private schools. And so that has created one of the most vibrant education systems in the country, quite literally. Yes, there are lots of challenges. Yes, there are still challenges with dropout rates, with low performance, but it's still, the system itself is more vibrant here than what we see elsewhere around the country. It's a system designed to meet student needs as opposed to expecting students to fit a one-size-fits-none system. And so, how many people here have children? How many people here have more than one children? So chances are, like, those two children are quite different, right? They're in the same family, but they have different interests, different temperaments. Sometimes they like art, sometimes they like sports, science geeks. There's all sorts of children are different, even though you're part of the same family unit. But that diversity is just not recognized in most states, right? We expect sort of the same sort of one-size-fits-all system. And what you have here is such an important part of choice. It's not just about competition, it's about creating sort of diverse institutions that can meet students where they are in their diverse needs and helping them to improve. So meeting them and helping them to improve. You understand that choice is a means, not an end. That it gives people the means to exercise freedom, it gives them a chance to access prosperity, to better themselves, and in doing so, better their communities. The issue here in Louisiana, at the end of the day, it's actually not choice. Because those with money, those of us with money and means, have choice. We pick up, we move, we pick our houses based on where we want to access schools. The issue is about making sure that everyone has access to choice. If you're making good on that promise, just to go through a lot of what you heard today, the Louisiana Tuition Donation Rebate Program, you have the Louisiana School Choice Program for students with exceptional abilities, you have the Louisiana Elementary and Secondary Tuition Deduction, you have the Louisiana Scholarship Program, you have charter schools, you have the Supplemental Course Academy, which is bringing choice down to the individual course level. And yes, you have some great public schools as well. This isn't all about the failure of the traditional system. There are great public schools. But what's great about all of this is that it is a system of options to meet kids with what they are and to help take them to the next level. We don't have that in other parts of the country. So millions of children needlessly are today because we force them to go to schools that aren't serving them. We offer them no alternative. But that's not true here in Louisiana. So you need to know that your work is being noticed quite literally all around the country. That the organization I work with, we support AFC and Bayo and DFOR, but we work with governors, state lawmakers, the state chiefs from all around the country in helping them think through different education reforms, thinking through different ways of taking their systems to the next level. The number of times we point people back here to what you're doing and say, think about replicating that, think about taking their lessons learned and taking it to the next level. It's frequent. Literally, quite literally, all eyes are focused on the work that you're doing here. So the point is that you are not just saving kids here in Louisiana, you quite literally are saving kids all around the country through the reforms that you're putting in place. And I know this progress has not been easy. We detailed that. Paul gave a great history about some of the challenges and the struggles, and that no win is ever final. It's a daily struggle, particularly during times of tight budgets. And I wish that this was really a battle about education, but too often, in very many instances, this is a battle over who controls money. And the very fact that you introduce choice and parents can start diverting flows from the traditional system, that is very threatening to the very status quo from a lot of institutions. But that's all a conversation about adults. It's not a conversation about kids. The programs you have are challenging that, challenging that conventional wisdom and giving for the first time parents a say where their funds should go. But now is not the time to back away from that progress. We need to demand more. We need to go further in these reforms. We need to demand for kids in very many instances where their voices are now part of the debate because the debate is so often about adults. So we need to be bold. We need to be bold in protecting the options students have, bold in expanding those options for other students, bold in helping this generation of Louisiana students achieve their full potential. And so we leave with a sense of urgency, again, not just with your work, but the work that we're doing quite literally with AFC and BAO and DEEPR all around the country. We need your continued great leadership in making this a possibility. So I just wanted to end on one, we had some references this morning to BAO, and many of you know Howard Fuller and just what a legend he's been in the education community. And he has this great quote that he often closes his speeches with. It's from Bill Daggett, who's sort of legendary in the education leadership space. He says, "We must love our children's hopes, our children's dreams, our children's aspirations, and our children's prayers more than we love the institutional heritage of the school system." That's what we need here in Louisiana. So I just want to thank you very much on behalf of our organization and literally on behalf of policymakers around the country that are learning from you every single day. So thank you.